tomorrow.
All right, sorry, they moved us to the...
It's okay.
Morning. Welcome. Yeah. Good morning. I am just starting, kind of welcoming you, warming you somehow. In the meantime, that the last ones can join us and of course take a seat. Please. You're not in late. I am just welcoming you all. Welcome. Please make yourself comfortable. So welcome at Algebra Coach at the All Digital Summit. I am Claudia Matera, and I'm part of the All Digital team. And I had in the last more or less 3 years had the pleasure to work for a project called Rayuela, focused on cybercrimes affecting young people. We're going to listen more about adults. I'm not going to anticipate the topic of the day. I would like to give the word All Digital CEO, Peter Pavolji, to welcome you from the All Digital side.
Thank you very much, Claudia. My name is Peter Pavolji. And we are really proud of being part of the Rayuela project. And as you may notice, you are part of a larger event, which is our All Digital Summit, which is our annual meeting point of all digital member organizations and other stakeholders who every year get together and discuss issues about digital transformation. And the title of our summit in these days is Skills for Digital Tomorrow. We have really carefully selected this title. We are not only talking about skills, digital skills that are needed today, but all sorts of skills, transversal skills, green skills, life skills, that are needed for a digital future. The Rayuela Project Final Conference is hosted by Algebra University, and I would like to thank very much Mislav Balkovic, the Dean of the University, for joining us and also hosting this event. As Mislav said, they also played a little role in this project when they were testing the game. And I would like to highlight our contribution to this project, probably just two main elements. One was the involvement of our member organizations in the piloting phase. We had 9 member organizations from 8 different countries who experienced the game, translated to their local languages, and like 350 children and educators were testing the games. And the other contribution was the TikTok campaign, which we ran from January 2013, over 5 months, with talented artists, music players. We were using TikTok. We were reaching out, especially teenagers who are native on the TikTok, and we managed to establish collaborations with educational institutions, and most importantly, raised awareness on cybercrime issues. Thank you very much. We are very proud of hosting this final conference and again, being part of this project. And I think I would like to give the floor, after we have a few more guests coming in, to Dean Mislav Balkovic to welcome you from Algebra University, the host of the final event.
Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing us to play a small part in your project. Although we are not a partner, we try to use the game in Croatian schools to see what we could learn and how we could contribute to what you're doing at the European level. And being in the position of educator and parent of a young child, I could not do much more than thank you for going into understanding how people and how children behave on the internet. For young people, it's a new part of the world. It's mixed very often with their identity, and that's why it's so hard and so the questions are so deep in order to better understand what is going on and where this kind of border between what parents or educators should do or shouldn't do, where it stops or where it starts. So not to take it too much time, it's a pleasure to have you all here. It's really easy to stand now a few days prior to the end of the project with most of the outcomes already reached and finished to say thanks, but still that's the only thing we could do now. And we were really proud to get involved. And if there will be some similar projects in the future, we are open for the discussion to support them in the future. Thank you very much, and please feel in our campus as if you are at home.
Thank you very much. I would like now to start diving into the project, and so for this reason I would like to ask Gregorio Lopez, as the coordinator of the Rayuela project, to join me and please support me in introducing to Rayuela and what is going to happen today.
Okay, thank you. Before getting into the details of the conference, I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Alberto Francoso, who is the head of the Service of Cybersecurity and Cybercrime Analysis of the Spanish National Unit on Cybersecurity and Cybercrime, depending on the Interior Ministry. He has been so kind as to join us today as a representative of the Spanish presidency of the European Council. So thank you so much, Alberto, for coming. It's so important for us, considering that in the end users of this project are the law enforcement agencies. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Gregorio. Thank you. Good morning. Before that, this is a ceremony. A ceremony without a speech is not a ceremony. So I prepared a speech. Well, Thank you for the organization. Thank you for the people to the project of Rayuela. As a representative of the Spanish Ministry of Interior, it's a real pleasure to share with you the completion of one of the most beautiful projects we have been involved in at the Cyber Coordination Office, where I'm currently working. This office has, among others, the function of coordinating a cyber project to fight cybercrime that can help Spanish police forces to improve their effectiveness. Let me give you a few facts. According to the Ministry of Interior's Cybercrime Study 2022, cybercrime has grown by more than 50% since 2019. Moreover, of every 100 cybercrimes, only 16 in Spain are solved, which further aggravates this problem. This increase is of a great concern to the Ministry of the Interior, which is doing everything in its power to alleviate the effects of this increase of crime. On the other hand, the use of information technologies, which is now part of all daily activities, is taking place from an increasingly early age. Another fact, the percentage of minors between 10 and 15 years old who have used a computer and accessed the internet in the last 3 months in Spain is more than 95%, almost the same percent. This increase in cybercrime and the massive use of information technologies by minors is an explosive cocktail that generates a very high risk that we cannot ignore. Not assume. But you will agree with me that the best crime is the one that is not committed. This is the best crime, because there are no victims, no social or economic damage. It is therefore very important to focus on the prevention of cybercrime, not only in the fight against criminals, but also in the awareness raising and training of potential victims, in order to avoid the occurrence of acts that are very difficult to repair. We are focused now in the victims. Initiatives such as the Rayuela project, which aims to educate children and young people in a graphic and fun way to avoid being victims of perpetrators of cybercrime without being aware of it, treated from a preventive perspective, make this application a very powerful tool to reduce cybercrime among this group. The versatility of the application, the possibility of updating risk situations, and this rigorous work behind the project with the participation of teachers, police officers. Well, I can tell you about the people behind this project. You know. Well, psychologists and a long list of other professionals have made it something that any police force in any country will be delighted to participate in and collaborate with. Seriously, for me, personally, was a very beautiful project. I'm convinced that this project has a long way to go, and that, thanks to it, many children will begin to take their first steps in the virtual world safely, knowing the risks and adopting good practice. I'm finished. I'm very grateful to those responsible for the project for sharing the content with us, and wish them all the best for them in their project, and therefore for all of us as a society. Thank you, Grego. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alberto, for joining us today, for your kind words and for your support throughout the entire project. This has been very important for us. I would like to thank you also, the Dean of the Algebra University, for joining us today, for your kind words and for hosting the event here. We greatly appreciate it. We also greatly appreciate your participation in the project. It has been very important for us. And yeah, I would like to thank you all for coming, for joining us in such a special moment for us, right? After three years of project, it comes to an end, and we have been working hard. We have done our best to put the ice on top of the cake, right? And of course, that regarding this, I would like to thank our colleagues from All Digital, because they have done such a great work these last weeks, months, working on organizing everything for today. Thank you. So now I will give you some hints about the how the event is organized. We have, I think that this is not working, right? No, yeah, okay. So we have like 4 big blocks. First one is focused on the video game and the analysis of the data gathered through the video game. Then we have another block which is focused on technology and knowledge transfer and policy making. And then we have a couple of sessions that will be very practical, hands-on sessions. You will have the chance to play the game yourself, and you will also have the opportunity to discuss with our experts in legal and ethical issues about the implications of analyzing the data gathered through the game in this sense. In the first block, the one about the game and the data analysis, we have 2 keynote speeches. First one will be delivered by David Wright, the coordinator of CC Driver, our sister project. Those who have elder brothers and sisters will know how important they are. They have played a key role in the project, and it's so great to today. Unfortunately, he will connect remotely because he broke his ankle recently, so he couldn't join us in person. Then we will have a keynote speech from Dr. Edmond Awad from Oxford and Exeter University. Edmond is one of the scientific advisors of the project, and he has been working in a serious game for such a long time. He has been helping us throughout the entire project, and it's also such a pleasure and an honor that he joined us today for delivering this keynote. Thank you, Edmond. And then we will have a presentation about the game from our colleagues from Technalia, who have developed the game themselves, and a presentation about data analysis from my colleague Mario Castro, who has led the data analysis in the project. In the second block, we have a keynote from Fabiola Vaz about policy making with special focus in minors. Thank you so much, Fabiola, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And a keynote from Nick Asseri from Europol Innovation Lab, who has they have been supporting us through the entire project, which has been so important for us. Thank you so much, Nick, and to all your colleagues in Europol Innovation Lab. And yeah, our plan is indeed, as we will mention during the conference, to leave the game in the Europol 2 repository, so that is available for law enforcement agencies all over Europe for free. And then we have a round table about the benefits of using the game that will be moderated by Julian Coman from CEPOL. Thank you so much also for joining us, Julian, and for working with us, or sharing the journey with us, especially during this last year. And a panel about how to translate the findings into policies that will be moderated by Fabiola as well. And as I said, after that, you will have the chance to play the game yourself. We will have a debate, a discussion, and we will have a session on ethics and legal aspects that are so important when analyzing data related to minors and cybercrimes, right? So that's all from my side. Bye now, Claudia. Hand it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gregorio. So in the meantime, that we have the first speaker that is joined remotely. I would kindly ask to accomplish a very specific task that for those that work in projects know very well, which is to distribute the sheets that I ask each of you to sign for us. No, this is very theoretical, what I'm asking, very philosophical. And so in the meantime, I see you, David, on screen. Morning and welcome.
Morning.
So David is the Director and Chief Research Officer at Trilateral Research Limited. And David Wright has recently awarded with an honorary doctorate of laws by Coventry University to recognize his, of course, work with publishing and research on ethics and data protection of advanced new technologies. I'm entertaining you while we do some noise with the papers and pens, and don't want to distract you to listen to David. It would be nice if possible also to see David, because we see very well these lights. It would be nice also, if possible, to see him while introducing us, talking with us about youth and cyber crimes. Findings from the CC Driver project, because David Wright, as a researcher and also coordinator, was of course working on the CC Driver project, but he is going to talk about it now. So David, I give the floor to you.
Thanks, Claudia. You can hear me okay, yeah?
Yes, maybe a little bit higher, if possible, in the speaker in the room.
Okay. And,
See, that's the entertaining.
and you can see my screen.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased and honored to be at the conference, at least virtually, digitally. I'm really pleased also because we've had such close coordination, such close collaboration between the Rayuela project. As Grego said, it's our sister project. And it's been a really great 3 years to have the collaboration between the two projects. So as mentioned, I was the coordinator of the project. The project finished at the end of April. I'm hesitating because I don't seem to be able to move the screen. Let's try again. No. Let me just stop sharing momentarily and then open it up again and see if that's better. No. That's odd. I'm not sure why it's not moving. Let's take it out of. No, that's not working either. Let's see if I can share it from here.
Let's do the final, I would say, David, try. And if not, I believe from the room, we can help out in moving on these slides.
Yeah. Well, let's see. No. Yeah, it's not moving from one slide to another, I'm afraid. So are you able to project the slides and I could speak to the slides?
And from the room, David. So just tell us that's the job. Tell us when to move forward, and we do.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. So let's go to the next slide.
Hi, sorry. Can you just please open your presentation, and then click on it, and then you have next, and then you'll be able to move it with your arrows.
Oh yeah. Oh, very good. I didn't see that. Very good. I was using the keyboard. Okay, that's great. Okay. Can you see the screen then now?
No, you need
No.
to share
Okay,
it again. Go
okay.
to Zoom and share.
Let me try that again then. Bear with me 1 second.
See, during events, there's always something going on.
Totally. Okay.
And digital skills are all.
How about now?
Yeah, start the.
Yeah.
Click it again. Yep.
I want. There. Yeah.
And yeah, you can click the arrow now. Nice.
Brilliant.
Great, it works.
At last. Sorry for that delay. Right. So the CC Driver project, as I finished, was, as I said, it finished in April. It was a 3-year project. We had more than 40 deliverables from the whole project. I think it was very successful, almost as successful as Rayuela. We had 13 partners from 9 European countries in the consortium, and 5 of those were law enforcement agencies. It was very important for us to have law enforcement agencies in the consortium. And indeed, we formed a LEA working group by the local police of Valencia, who are also a partner in Rayuela. And we indeed invited the LEAs from Rayuela to join that LEA working group. So we had very good cooperation with PLV, a partner in both projects. We took our research from various sources, from these various disciplines that you can see here: psychology, cyberpsychology, criminology, neurobiology, anthropology, and so forth. We conducted quite a few interviews during the project. These were just some of those that we conducted for one of the deliverables. We were particularly interested in what drives young people to cybercrime. Why is it happening as a phenomenon? We also looked at the various legal issues involved in cybercrime, and in particular, cyber delinquent behavior of young people. And there are some various legal issues that are quite germane to this topic. One is that cybercrime is really quite easy to commit, and it can be committed across borders too. And also the rise of the internet and various new technologies, including artificial intelligence, have given rise to new forms of crime, for example, ransomware. And also the nature of the internet makes it difficult to prove criminal intent. It's very hard to get forensic evidence to identify who the perpetrator was. And even after identifying who the perpetrator was, especially in the instance of young people, were they doing it just for fun, or were they not paying attention to what they were doing? Why was it happening? We also found some differences in cybercrime legislation across Europe. In some cases, the age of the criminals varied, of criminal sanction varied. And we also found differences in approaches to cybercrime. In some cases, we found great differences, for example, in the prison terms, which can range from 6 months to 10 years. But we also found some good differences in countries in terms of providing some alternative to prison. And in those alternatives include things like education and community service, raising awareness, promoting cyber skills, warnings from police, and workshops in schools on online safety and some of the negative consequences of committing cyber crimes, and promoting positive cyber skills. So those were among the findings with regard to legal issues. We also found a new culture of online harassment was rising. We found it particularly in schools, affecting both teachers and students. So online harassment was not directed just at students or not just at teachers, but both. And we also found this increasing use of phishing, ransomware, and other malicious links. There have been very few studies of young people and cybercrime, at least not until our projects, the Rayuela and CC Driver. In terms of the pathways to cybercrime, we found curiosity itself was the main pathway to cybercrime. There were other factors at work as well, such as peer pressure. If your friends are engaged in some kind of behavior or act that they think is cool, then they influence the other kids too. So there's an issue. There are issues of popularity, respect, and street cred involved there with those peer pressures. We also found personality traits form a pathway to cybercrime as well. Like some kids just like the thrill of committing something that is illegal or verges on illegality. In some cases, they find performing these kinds of acts as a way of raising their own self-esteem and responding to their various impulses. Human drivers, we found various human drivers. Certainly one of them was kids who are aggressive by nature. Some kids like to manipulate other kids. It gives them a feeling of power. Lack of remorse was certainly a factor. Participating or initiating these kinds of activities was a way of ending social isolation too. If the kid is in his or her bedroom and feeling isolated, then joining the cyber world is a way of ending that perceived socialization, isolation, or loneliness. One of the great things about participating on the internet is that it's possible to hide your tracks, to be anonymous. And it's also a way for some bright kids to get a lot of money quickly. So that's also a driver in cybercrime behavior. And the risk of getting caught is almost non-existent. I was very interested in the comment by Alberto Francoso a few minutes ago, where he said that in the last few years, they've only solved 16 crimes, and I would say cybercrimes, and I would say that's quite typical from some of the studies that we've done as part of CC Driver. We found the successful prosecution rate varied from less than 1% to 0.01%. So committing cyber crimes is virtually a prosecution sanction-free activity. So that's clearly a driver too. People just don't think they're going to get caught. From the point of view of technical drivers, two new technologies have become widely available and cheaply available. It's easy now to create websites and use the dark web to create fake profiles, create false identities, and find whatever you want to do from various crimes as a service toolkits on the especially on the dark web. So what you need from a technical point of view to commit these crimes is readily available. And you'll recall my earlier comment about curiosity being the main driver. So clearly kids are curious about these new technologies, and they're finding the capabilities that they have, especially to create these kinds of activities, cyber criminal or cyber delinquent activities. I would say one of the main activities of the CC Driver project was a very big survey that we conducted of 8,000 young people between the ages of 16 to 19 across 9 European countries. And to our understanding, it's the largest such study investigating young people and their tendencies towards cybercrime and cyber deviance. The main purpose of conducting this survey was to find the drivers that compel or impel young people to engage in cybercrime. We had a UK research company undertake this survey for us. They used participant panels to conduct this survey. It was online. And they took into account various demographic variables like household income, location, education, occupation, and the household makeup. So they wanted to ensure that they had a representative cross-section of the population of young people. The survey was conducted for 3 months between June and August in 2021. And one of the findings was that young people of that age group were spending between 4 and 7 hours per day online. And more than a third of those people, those young people, were spending more than 8 hours online each day. So, a lot of screen time. Some of the other findings from the study, we found that 84% of young people owned a smartphone. So the instrument they can use for committing cyber crimes or cyber delinquent activity. 75% owned a laptop. The most popular social media platforms were YouTube, Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok, and Snapchat. We found that more than 2/3 of young people had multiple social media accounts. So they weren't just on YouTube or just using Instagram. They were involved in several social media. We found that 1 in 8 did not use any form of privacy enhancing technologies. So they made themselves effective victims too. We found more than half are using online forums or chat rooms or online gaming, where a lot of the cyber criminal activity takes place or is discussed. 19% were using peer-to-peer networks, 12% using dark web forums. And then we found a prevalence of cyber criminal behavior in these various categories that you see here. So in terms of cyber deviant, risky, or harmful behavior, we found that 1 in 2 of the surveyed kids were watching pornography, or 1 in 4 were involved in tracking somebody else, 1 in 4 also trolling and so forth. And in terms of cyber criminal behavior, we found digital privacy accounted for 1 in 3 of the young people surveyed. using illegal gambling markets comprised 1 in 5 money muling, form of money laundering, occupied 1 in 8, and so forth. So cyber criminal and cyber deviant behavior is certainly widespread amongst young people. Indeed, we found that 69% of European youth said they had committed at least some form of cybercrime or online harm or risk-taking. 47% said they had engaged in such behavior in the past 12 months, which is a lot when you think about it, like almost half of young people engaging in some form of cyber criminal activity in the past year. I mean, it's astonishing, really. We also found, as maybe one might expect, that males were more likely than females to have been involved in some form of cybercrime or online behavior. And then we also found a number of behaviors were highly interrelated to sextortion, revenge porn, identity theft, cyber fraud, and so forth. So if somebody was engaged in one of those activities, it was likely that they were involved in others as well. So how do we stop young people from sliding into cybercrime? That was, I would say, one of the positive conclusions, one of the positive outcomes from a survey that was in many respects quite shocking. But we did find some good activities by concerned parents and teachers and policymakers in the various countries that we surveyed. And one of the most important was to provide some creative, with the emphasis on creative, educational programs to develop a basic resilience and knowledge for young people's safety online. So if young people understand the threats that come with using the internet, the risk of cyber attacks, then that will make them more resilient. We also found that it was important to take a nuanced approach to encourage young people to think more about using the internet and the impact of their behavior on others and indeed their own future. So not taking necessarily a black and white approach. If you behave this way, we're going to send you to prison. Rather than it's better to understand what's actually motivating the person in question and seeing if they can be steered in a more positive direction. Providing educational opportunities to attain cyber-related qualification was an important finding, and I think that's a really important finding too. I mean, when you consider that there is a huge shortage of qualified people to engage in cybersecurity practice. There's really a huge shortage. I read in one of the socioeconomic studies that we were doing in CC Driver that there was a worldwide shortage of something like 1.5 million jobs opening for trained cybersecurity practitioners. So if lots of young people, let's say 46 or 47%, are engaged in some form of cybercrime, then if they can be turned around so that they can use their skills to help us overcome this huge shortage of cybersecurity practitioners, then that would be a very good thing indeed. So trying to turn them around has positive social benefits as well. And it's an activity that parents, guardians, teachers, I would say all of us need to be engaged in to encourage positive behavior and to be alert to deviant behavior. So parents and caregivers, guardians need to pay attention, and teachers too have to pay attention to what the kids are actually doing online. What are they checking out? And then finally, we found various pathways out of cybercrime, which are listed here. Public awareness campaigns are crucial, not only in terms of young people, but I would say people of all ages. Every single European project that I've been involved with, a security project, has made exactly the same point. Public awareness is so important. It still remains a challenge. As I mentioned a minute ago, I think it's important to offer young people realistic alternatives for using their cyber skills. And prosecution, sending kids to jail, doesn't have to be the first option. There are other things that can be done to avoid the harm that comes from sending young people to prison. Training courses to cultivate ethical and cyber knowledge is those are very important. Schools can do more, and others can do more in terms of training young people and cultivating their ethical and cyber knowledge. And finally, very last comment was one of the one of the experts that we interviewed made this comment about conversations can be quite powerful in getting young people to think about what they're doing. In other words, talk to people, talk to the young kids about the internet. Yeah, so I would say that's my final message from the findings of the CC Driver project. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks, dear David, and also to manage actually live the presentation. I don't know if from the audience there is any questions to address. Have from Gregorio, please, with the mic so everyone can hear.
Hi, thank you so much, David. I knew the results, but I love the way you packed all together in this presentation for this keynote. I could be speaking with you about these topics for a long time, but I will leave this for the moment where we can share some beers to do so. But just a couple of forward-looking questions. What do you think that are the main challenges that we have ahead of us once we are finishing our projects, and how do you think that society can make the most of the results that we have produced in the project? Thank you, David.
Those are really good. Those are really good questions. I would say in terms of the main challenges that we face, I mean, the Rayuela team and the CC Driver team, I would say the main challenge that we face is making people as stakeholders aware of our results. I think both projects have produced a lot of really good results. And we have already generated, I would say, quite good awareness. But you know, when you consider the market of 350 million people in the EU, we still have many more people to inform. So I think public awareness or stakeholder awareness of our results is probably our main challenge. I'm happy to say, however, that we continue to get positive pickup from our results. it's interesting that the Commission has invited us to present at a security conference in November on the projects, and we certainly have had continuing interest in the results of the project. So I think that's a good thing. In terms of how society can benefit from the projects, that's also a good question. I would say one of the main ways that society can benefit is from policy makers adopting our recommendations. And I think the game developed in Rayuela is a really great outcome from your project, and I think that will have an ongoing life of its own, that law enforcement agencies and Europol and so forth can make use of that gaming activity. So certainly, I think from Rayuela's perspective, you have a life after the project. I would say also that the research that we've done and all of the partners who were involved in both projects will help us in future projects as well. And indeed, some of the partners from both Rayuela and CC Driver are already working on a new proposal for 2024. So I think we'll have some still ongoing benefits, and hopefully society will benefit as well from what we've done.
Many thanks, David. Actually, this kind of anticipates a little bit aspects that will be discussed, especially during the panels. So it's really nice to hear these inputs, actually. There's another question from the front for you, David.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe because I was late, I missed it, but I asked if you have data about social backgrounds of the children and also the social backgrounds of the parents, because we see in practice that parents without digital skills have very difficult to work with their children and teach their children about cybercrime, about security, and they only buy a computer and they let them with a computer all the time.
Yeah, that's also a good question. As far as the data on the social background of the children and the parents are concerned, the children and who we surveyed, the answer is yes. We do have demographic and social background of the various people who we surveyed. It was quite a big survey, not only in terms of the numbers, like 8,000 young people surveyed, but also in the level of detail that they went into for the various questions. I would estimate that the average time to respond to all of the questions was, I would say, between 20 and 30 minutes. So they got really a lot of detailed data, including the social background and so forth.
Thank you very much, David, and thanks for joining also us remotely. Thank you very much. And thanks for the questions, of course. I would now invite the next speaker, Edmond Awad. Please join me on stage. Edmond Awad is a senior research fellow at University of Oxford and senior lecturer at the University of Exeter, and previously he led the design development and research around Moral Machine, a website that gathers human decisions on moral dilemmas faced by driverless cars at the MIT Media Lab. He is going to address his speech on serious games as a research tool, challenges and opportunities. All is set, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudia, for the introduction. Thank you. It's a great honor to be here. Thank you to Grego and to Rayuela for inviting me to give this presentation here. I'm going to talk about serious games as a research tool. Before I get into that, I will tell you about one effect that is usually studied in psychology, especially in the charitable giving domain. And that is the identifiable victim effect. Now, identifiable victim effect basically says that if you're trying to get some donation from people, it's usually if you tell them some identifiable information about the potential victim or the recipient, then people would be more willing to give money. Now, this kind of says that this is true or not, and this has been studied. Now, of course, there are so many ways to try to show that whether this is true or not. There are like qualitative research methods. I'll show you here some traditional behavioral methods which use quantitative way, which is like randomized controlled trial. So what usually would happen, this is also like sort of state of the art up until recently, is that you would bring maybe try to get about 50 or 60 students would come to the lab, and then you will randomly allocate them into one of two groups, and one group would read a control vignette. Sorry, I feel like one slide is missing. Is this like an older version of the slides, probably? Yes, okay. Okay, so here's like an example of a version. Of course, this is a little bit more detailed. Sometimes, so studies don't give so much detail, but then you would read like a vignette, a story about some elderly woman who live in East Asia and who is in need for medical help. And your $100 could actually help her, so would you give to her? Now, this is one group would read that, maybe 30 students would read those, or 30 participants. And then another group will read like almost identical story, but with like a small change is that you provide some identifiable information like the name of the person, right? Sometimes without last name, but the idea is that, once you give this name, maybe like people become more like empathetic and so anyway, so now, the fact that this is only, and then they ask people like how much you're willing to give or what are you willing to give. And of course, the difference could, we would say it's really completely dependent on this small change that you made. But it's also this difference that you would measure is also dependent on some other details, which I will call now contextual factors. These are the details that you give in order to provide some context about these victims, right? So in this case, it's an elderly woman. It's also, there are some other details that you provide in this case. Now, usually these are fixed between the two stories, but this is basically any effect we find here is completely conditional on all of these factors. Now, I'm just going to talk about some of the weaknesses of doing research this way, which has been like most of how people do research in behavioral sciences and psychological science. One thing is usually there are like small samples, right? You have like a very few people who come to the lab. We cannot afford getting more. And with small samples, you get this inconclusive finding. Sometimes you might find difference. Other times you don't find difference. If you don't find a difference, it doesn't mean defect. It means that you just didn't have enough. Because all these are not replicable. Sometimes you try to repeat the same thing and you try to study this. You end up maybe finding something else. There's also an assumption of homogeneous samples because we don't have a lot of participants. One is basically like the same, right? And then while in real life people are different, right? You have very different ways of, you have participants have their own uniqueness. Another disadvantage as well. They are not representative. I mean, these are, in many cases, there has been like university students that come to the lab, or they are workers that, most recently like Amazon Mechanical Turk or Prolific. And these are also usually oversampling from the Western world or like Western educated industrialists this weird acronym which says that, that this group of participants have been oversampled, but they don't actually represent the rest of the world. Another also problem is that this one at a time approach, right? So as I mentioned now, like this finding, if we find any effect, would be really conditional on all the other details that we have propounded. Now, the identifiable victim effect has been studied a lot of times. And this is a meta-review studies, actually, that brought all of these studies and showed that some of these studies found the effect, others found the opposite effect. If we give identifiable information, people will be even less likely to give, right? And the very different results is, one thing is because you have different contextual factors. In some cases, it's a young boy. In other cases, it's like two little girls. In these cases, it could be an elderly woman. So as a result of all of this, we end up with fragmented insights. Do we really know if identifiable victim effect is true or not? Does it work in the opposite direction or not? Now, this is where serious games enters here as a research methodology. Now, what I'm going to say here might not exactly apply to Rayuela, all of it, but hopefully there's enough overlap for you to appreciate the value of serious games as a research tool. I'm going to talk about first two examples from my own research. One of them is the Moral Machine website, which we did which we deployed in 2016. Basically, it's about driverless cars and the moral decisions they will make. For example, in this case, you have driverless cars headed on the road, and brake fails, and the car will have to choose either to continue straight and kill these 4 pedestrians who are crossing illegally, including the dog, or it will have to swerve and hit the barrier and sacrifice its own passenger. Now, we designed this as this was an experimental scientific experiment study, but also we designed it as a serious game by providing like some kind of nice visuals, made it like a very easy, just a choice between 2 things, and also providing some kind of like a feedback at the end that summarizes people's results, for example, how they compare to the rest of them. Another example we did, which was also inspired by the success of the Moral Machine, which is My Goodness, which is a similar idea, but for charity dilemmas. Now, in this case, you have $100, and you could give it either to Charity A, which would give, let's say, help 20 women in Africa by providing some nutritious meals, or you could give it to Charity B, which would help 4 women in North America by providing clean water. And maybe the participants would be, for example, let's say if they're from the US, maybe they have like some tendency whether should I help people from my own country, or let's say should I help people in another continent, which might be maybe more in need. We also tried to gamify it as well, provided some also kind of summary of results, summary of feedback for people. Now I'll talk about, again, here, this one I'm talking about the potential benefit. So now I'm going to talk about this basically in the context of these 2 projects. We put them online. We put them on the website. So the first thing is really when you put things online, you have a potential to scale, right? Half of the world population is online. So when you put something online, there's always the possibility for it to get a reach, right? So in our 2 projects, for example, in the Moral Machine, in the first 18 months, we managed to get about 4 million users to the website. And they came from almost every country and territory and dependency. They answered about 40 million of these dilemmas. And we had also even a survey at the end that requires more work. And we had 500,000 people. Right now, the website is still running, and we have reached about 100 million of these decisions. My Goodness was less successful, but it still got a lot of people as well. We had about like a 10% of what we had in the case of the Moral Machine. Okay. So as you can see, there is a potential, and if you get lucky, like we did, then you could get to a lot of people. Now, with the potential to scale, you get a lot of benefits. One thing is you manage you will be able to study a lot of different causal hypotheses. Like, for example, the identifiable victim effect could be one of those, right? You could also, having a lot of different hypotheses increase the realism because now you're providing all this context for people. It also mitigates social desirability effect. Social desirability bias is when the participant actually figure out what you're trying to study, and then they try to work for you. It's like, oh, I think like he's trying to study maybe identifiable victim effect. It seems like he gave me a name here. I'm gonna help them. I'm gonna just increase my donation. Or they didn't give me any identifiable information. I'll try to not give a lot of donations so that they. So in this case, when you have so many different factors, it becomes really hard for the participants to know what you're trying to study. In the case of moral machine, for example, we had like 9 different factors which we varied on top of each other. One thing is like whether the car should stay or swerve, if the potential victims are pedestrians or passengers, whether they're legality, there's other things about those potential victims, gender, age, and some other things. So we had these different features varied on top of each other. Now, usually when you put these all together, you have like a high combinatorics, right? You have so many different conditions and you need a lot of people to fill these kind of surveys. So when you have a lot of people, you can manage to do this complex design. In the case of My Goodness, we also had even a more complex design. We had, we divided our cards into 3 parts, like who are the recipients, where they are, and what the donation is going to be. In who, we varied also age and gender, identifier victim, we provide sometimes names, social distance, we number from 1 to 300. We also varied whether they live in the same place where the users are or in different place. And we had 8 different regions, also 4 different charitable causes and charity brands. Sometimes we provide the name of the charity. Sometimes the charity name is more recognizable, like Red Cross. Sometimes it's less recognizable, which I cannot really pronounce. Yes, Control Initiative. So as you can see, so many hypotheses, all of these things, we're trying to understand the effect of each one of these while also varying everything else or keeping everything else fixed on both sides. Now, the other nice thing that you get is also you can also compare the effect of these factors together, right? So you can actually compare them to each other. For example, in the case of the moral machine, we could also, for example, study what is the difference if we replace pets with humans, how more likely would be people to save them, right? So let's say if I take all the scenarios that I have pets and now I replace the pets with human, this is the probability of saving them would be, this is the x-axis, would grow bigger by 0.6. Similarly, you could do something similar with the number of lives. Each time you add another person to the group, the probability of people wanting to save them increases by this much for 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see, for example, adding 4 people is more important for people than replacing a pet with a human. And then you do this for all the other factors. So we managed to basically rank which factors people find the most important for them. Other benefits, also low uncertainty. When you have more people, you have a lower uncertainty. Of course, that could still be biased, but it's also like the uncertainty about your estimates, whether this effect or not. If you have more participants, on average, you have a lower uncertainty, which is better. Better representation as well. As I mentioned in the previous studies, people usually focus on the Western world. In our case, you managed to reach people from different locations around the world, and this is just a map of where there is light, and you can see that there is some sort of like a representation or at least reach to the places where there is light, which also capture internet connection as well. And also it allows you to study some heterogeneity. So not only we can do multiple factors together, but we can also get at this problem which I mentioned before, which was with the identifiable victim, is that we didn't really know whether the effect goes right or left because there are so many different studies, right? So what we did is, because we collected our data this way, we could actually basically bring all the scenarios where we had an unidentifiable victim, and then bring all the scenarios where we had identifiable victim. And then we try to fix some other attributes. For example, let's take all the cases where you had only one elderly woman who needed a medical help and who was in East Asia, right? And this is fixed for both sides, but one case it has a name, Lily, in the other one it does not. And then we can take all the scenarios. We made sure we have at least 30 users from each group. We calculate this effect, and then we could repeat this 156 times. Each time we fix different features. In other times, it's like 10 young boys who are in, let's say, Western Europe, who needs like a clean water. So it's kind of used many different variations. And we could actually see that the effect actually could really go either way, right? So the ones in blue here are when the effect actually is positive, right? So this is like some contextual factors. The one in red where the effect is negative. And this is just two examples here. So when it's an elderly woman who needs medical help and she's in East Asia, then this is like one of the most negative effects. While if it's a young girl who also lives in East Asia but needs water, then this is like one of the strongest positive effects. And this is kind of important now because we can also see the average of this distribution is somewhere here, which means that identifiable victim effect does have an effect. It's a bit weak. It's just a weak effect. I'm going to talk about challenges quickly. First of all is representation problems. Now, I did talk about how serious games could give you good representation if you put it online because you reach other places in the world, but that is also not perfect, right? Because these are also self-selected samples. If you put your website out there, you know, so you will only get people who are interested in your subject who's come to you, right? These are also internet users. So in areas in the world where there is no internet, then you will not reach those people. For example, in this case, you would see that, you know, we're missing a lot of places in Africa, for example, and East Asia. There are also like people have a special interest in this subject. They're also like usually male, low income, highly educated, progressive, non-religious participants. So they're not really representative of the world, right? But so you always have this, you know, representation problem. There are also measurement problem. It's really, there's always a challenge of capturing the behavioral effect, right? One thing is like, you want people to be not just telling you this is what we would do, but you want to see if they actually would do it, right? And if you, of course, put your website online, some people, especially economists, do something called incentive compatible, which means that they would give you bonus. They would give bonus to participants based on their answers, right? And maybe they would give them some amount of money and say, okay, now you have this $100. How much would you donate to this person? How much you would donate to this person? So they tie it to their incentive. Of course, you cannot do this if you want to put online, or if you want to collect a lot of people, that's a lot of money to spend on doing incentive compatible. Also immersive experience. Even though serious game could really bring some immersive experience, those games are not very immersive, but I would imagine like Rayuela is probably more immersive, and even video games could be also immersive, but at the same time, people still know they're playing a game. So it's not really real life. You could simulate or like get as close as possible, but it's not really how they would actually capture real life. There's also construct validity, which is like what you're trying to measure is actually what you actually are interested in measuring. Like, for example, if I'm trying to measure trust, then there are so many ways to measure trust. Maybe also, do I mean trust in your competence or trust in your honesty or trust in your... So there are so many ways to measure this. And when you're doing this in a game, you know, you want to entertain people as well. And you want to, like, let's say if you're designing for virality, you want to make things short, keep things short and small. And so you don't have enough time to like ask the same questions, like, like with a lot of words or in so many different ways. So you have limited text and also like you have to stick to the engaging tasks. You also have to make it very easy to understand, choice of fewer choices, and that's it. Finally, ethical problems. Of course, when you put things online, you cannot really exclude participants. You might get kids into your, even if you're not designing this for children, you might have kids coming to your website. So you have to keep this into your your mind. There's also like unintended harmful effects as well. If it causes distress or anxiety for your participants, you have to be very careful about this, unlike with other usual classical studies. And if you manage to get a lot of people, then and there is actually some harm that could happen, you're actually amplifying harm. So there's also really a bigger risk than in usual studies where, of course there's a risk also when you do this with children, right? So you have to be extra careful, but if you put this online, then you also have to be extra careful. So in summary, we have multiple opportunities when you do serious games. There are also some challenges. I want to just talk quickly about our most recent project, which is called the Face Game, where you see someone's picture online and then you play a game of whether you're going to go team or you go solo, and your incentive would be dependent on whether you both go team or you both go solo, or you go team and they go solo. Sometimes we will show you a replicant like this one, which is like an image generated by an AI that tries to maximize their team playing with you. In other times, we'll show you a faceless one. And finally, I hope this was a good segue to talk about Rayuela and as a serious game that is used also for doing research. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Edmund. I see already that there's a burning question coming from you.
Just a short question. What about the age of the participants in My Goodness, for instance, on the Moral Machine? Any information about that? What about minors? Are they playing these online games?
Yes, so we had this survey at the end, which asked people more things. Not everyone take that survey, but those who do, we can have their age. And because when we applied for the ethics approval for this, we said we're going to do this with adults only. So some people have indicated an age less than 18, and we had to exclude those from our analysis. Sadly, we had to exclude.
I see many, and I ask very kindly to be very straight to the point. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you so much, Edmund. In the previous keynote, at the end, David said that in order to society make the most out of our results, we should influence policy making. I know firsthand that at least in the case of autonomous vehicle, you and your team have tried to influence autonomous vehicle policy making. I'd like to know what are the main challenges that you have faced in this sense. So what are the main challenges of using results coming from serious game to influence policy making? Thank you.
Thank you. I think in our case, I think we should not use this directly to influence, like, let's say, direct effect on the policy. I think the value of this in this case, because it reached all different countries, is to do like a cross-country comparisons. But even then, you have to be careful. I think for this situation, in order for it to be policy or to be useful for policy, is to use nationally representative samples. So if we want to do these things with, let's say, apply it, let's say, in Croatia, then we better get this into controlled environment, bring people who represent really Croatia, and then see and say, okay, this is what Croatian people have said, right? But also this does not mean that this is what should be, right? So, we have the tyranny of majority, we have people who are biased, misinformed, who don't know much. So the fact that everyone thinks we should do this does not necessarily mean that we should do it, right? So this is where I think, usually policy should be driven by, basically some elected representative, but also some experts who are who knows about the subject matter, ethicists, legal scholars, engineers, who have been basically part of building these systems. But then even those experts could sometimes disagree, right? So there might be some genuine disagreement about the right thing to do, in which case maybe you can use the public.
Yes, thank you. You already answered my question, so I don't have any more.
Right. Two pigeons, one stone. We have a last one.
Yeah. I want to ask you, these are very small games, I think, that you can play in a few minutes. But what is, if you go into bigger games, what is the cost effectiveness of these games?
Yeah, you mean like if you're playing a game over like a 20, 50?
I suppose already these little games, it costs a lot of money to make them.
Yes.
And then if you go into bigger things, is this, is the effect worth the money?
Yes, it's a very high risk in terms of research perspective. It's a very high risk project because you might really end up not getting a lot of people coming to the website, right? In our case, we were lucky. Maybe also the subject matter itself was interesting for people. Like, or like driverless cars killing people. That sounds something like I want to say something about, right? So yes, I think it's not for everything. It's not. It's a complementary research method. You have to have resources to do it. So yeah, I agree with you. It's not always the right thing to do if you don't have enough money, or unless you don't have a strategy to recruit participants as well.
Thank you very much. I now would like to invite Ana Moya and Leire Bastida, both from Tecnalia and partners from within Rayuela. And they have been in charge of developing the video game, and actually this is the topic that they're going to introduce us. So the game, so the design and the main features. I give the word to you two.
Okay, thank you very much. So what we are going to present today here is just how we have designed the game. Okay, thank you. How we have designed the game. And after that, we are going to show you a quick video about the main theme of the game, okay? So you can see in a real game what we designed, okay? So I think I need, you have it, okay. Okay, so for the development of the Rayuela game, we use Unity technology, that is a game engine to develop games in an easy way. And it has also an asset store where you can buy different assets that are relevant for game development without having to invent the wheel. So one of the main focus of the game is the user interface, because we were targeting children between 11 and 15, 16 years old. So we need to find an intuitive user interface with an aesthetic visually attractive for this different range of age. So we focus on a cartoon visual appearance, and about the interaction with the game, we selected point and click gender because we think it is a very intuitive way to interact with the game. But during the pilot, we discovered that children are more used to use the keyboard because they are using PC games, RPG games, and they ask us to include the keyboard. So we have the point and click gender. I don't know if you know the Monkey Island series games, but we also included the use of keyboard to move in the game. Another part we included is the language support in the game. At the beginning, we planned only to have 4 or 5 languages supported in the game, mainly focused on the different pilots we have as the partners in the consortium. But finally, we were able to include 13. This allows us to have more pilots in different places, so we have a more heterogeneous representation of children to extract information that my colleague Mario later will explain you which are the outcomes of that data analysis. So the main idea of the game is just to educate children about different cybercrime situations, but also to collect information, to collect data that help us later to understand the behavior and try to prevent certain situations. So another part relevant in any game is the narrative. How we are going to engage children in our game. So that's why we define a narrative. And the narrative plot is about being part of the what we call the Spotlight Wardens Club. So the idea is just they are in the school, they belong to a club, and they need to help other people that are having different situations, okay? So at the beginning of the game, we introduce them to this club, how they can join, what they need to do, and then we present the different situations. And they need to help different persons during the game. The game is placed in different, or we can say in different locations that are familiar with children of this age. So we have the school, the classroom, we have the home, the room at home, we have a bowling place, we have the club, the room of the club where they can also access a computer, and they also have, for example, the canteen of the restaurant in the school and also in the mall. So they are very similar scenarios. And the interaction with the game, children can interact with the NPCs, the non-player characters, so they can situations and take decisions. They can also interact with different things on the domain. For they can interact with a mobile, interact with a computer, and also they can see information. It is placed in the different places. For example, they can read a newspaper or they can read the bowling score. Okay, so these are the main 3 interactions they can do in the game. And also we added, you will see later in the video, we added an additional mechanic. A mechanic is about an aura. When a person is having or is feeling some emotions, mainly is the victim in the different cases, we represent that emotion with an emojis, and we call it aura. So in that case, the persons can know if, for example, if a person is sad, we need to try to get that person happy to try to solve that situation. So we represent that with the emojis. You will see later. Okay, so how you can play the game? First, of course, as Edmond has also mentioned, we also need to collect information from the children to try to do the segmentation and analyze the data. So we create a website where we collect different information about the children. First, we collect demographic information. We can say that is the age, the gender, the place of birth, so we can differentiate between countries, if they have an immigration history, the school type, and the sexual orientation. Why we collect this information? Because from other work packages where Comillas University has been working, they have identified that this information is very relevant later to understand the behavior of the children. So that's why we collect this information. And also we ask for a set of questionnaires to get more information about them. For example, the use they have about technology, the personality they can have, also if they have been victims before or how they behave in a victimization situation. And after they fill all this information, we provide them a credential so they can log in the game. So we can say that for playing the game, first you need to provide us this information. So once you access the game, logging through the credentials we have get, first you have okay, great. First, you have the avatar creation screen where the children can create the avatar with different options. You know, they like a lot this. Here we have several colors for the face, different kind of hair, and so on. And then the first screen they see is the tutorial. Is introduction to the club. A first introduction to the story they are going to find in the game. Okay. After that, we provide tutorial, a quick introduction about how they with the game, okay? And they can access this tutorial anytime they want during the game. And finally, they start with the different. To avoid a bias during the pilot, we decided that all the adventures should be played consecutively, and players start with the first adventures, then to the second, to the third, and so on. So we have after play or they finish, complete the game, they can play again to change the decisions they have done. And for that, we have created what we call the portfolio. So here they can see the different files they have solved that are the different adventures they have lived, we can say. So, about all the adventures we have included, always based on the information that we have been provided from another work package in the project, we have 6 adventures. The first one is focused on the cyberbullying, and also it allows us to be a kind of tutorial, so children allows how to interact with the environment and how to use the game. Then we have a second about online grooming. The third one is also about cyberbullying and cyber hate. The fourth one is about phishing and IoT security. The fifth one is about romantic online grooming. And finally, the last one is about cyber hate and fake news. So As I had mentioned, this information or this decision about these games, these adventures, is based on information from another work package. Here is a brief description about how the third adventure about the cyberbullying case has been designed. As you can see, there was a research coming from the existing literature and from the pilots that analyze all the information coming from the context, environmental information, for example, isolation, lack of social support, school problems, family communications, then information about the personal part, that as you can see is similar to what we collect during the registration page. And finally, how they use internet, how they use all these devices, if they have a social network and spending. Here we focus on public profile and which kind of information they put online, okay? So having this in mind, the risk factor we want to analyze is which information they put public or private online, and how we measure that through the creation of a social network profile. So we create a script that is included in the Adventure 2, where we allow them to create a profile. We ask them a name, we ask them a password, we ask them to upload some picture, no real picture, always from the game, but trying to see how they represent this information. And also we allow them to try to provide a claim or some additional information in case they want. So this is how we have construct or design all the adventures in the game. So now, I think it would be better to see the game, and then we can have any question, we can solve any question you have.
Okay, let's see the video game. The video game is a small part of the whole serious game, of course, and covers the part related to the credentials, when the player has to include the credentials to enter the game, okay? It covers only the first adventure, okay? But we think that is enough to understand how it works and how it is designed, okay? If you want more information, please play, okay? So, let's go to the video game, if it's possible. Sí, está. Okay. It's, I think it's more or less 4 minutes, okay? So this is the registration page in different languages, as you can see here in the flag. This is the avatar creation. This is the part that they like a lot. They can spend a lot of time here designing the avatar. This is the person in the game. So there are different characteristics that they can select, and of course we have included there a group of names to select in order to not include the personal data of them, because some of them think about include their names, okay, in the game. No, this is not possible. You have to select the one here in of a set of names that we have included here. So let's play. Right? So this is the tutorial. There's some screenshots explaining how the game works and how all the elements that appears in the scenario works. Okay, in order to say, okay, if you want something, you can click here or here. And this is the tutorial. This is the game, but this first part is the tutorial that we introduce them the club, how to go in the club, and how you can interact with other characters and so on. So we include here some screenshots. And this is the avatar of the person that he is playing, okay? And we are here in the class, the first day in the class. So this is more or less an adventure that is guided a little bit in order to see how is the scenario, how you can go around the scenario, how you can interact, how you can select some decisions, okay? Okay, if you want to read the dialogues. Yes, and this is the first adventure in the bowling scenario. Okay, so here you can interact with all the things that is in this scenario, and you have here the option button that you can configure the camera. For example, this is a selection that you can go and select. And of course, the point and click and keyword, because we include a new way of interact with the scenario, as Lady mentioned before. So here you have some elements, objects, characters to interact in order to know what happens in this scenario and investigate what happens and try to help the person which is, in this case, a victim of a cyberbullying. So some dialogues are here, some interaction, and in some cases you have to decide what to do between different options that the game is showing you. This is for example, one decision. And you have to decide to share it, okay? And which is the consequences of sharing this photo in this case. Okay, another decision to take. Okay, we are now in a restaurant. Okay, we come back again to the class, and okay, you have to follow the adventure in order to know what happens and to decide again which option to take based on the option that the game is sharing with you.
Yeah, yes, just a comment. As you can see in the top right of the screen, you can see the radar. This because the children wants to know what they need to do. So in a visual way, we put it where they are located. They are at the start in the center, and the circles are people in the screen they can talk to, and also there are other figures for other different information.
Yes, okay, sorry, because I can see it. And yes, in order to know what, with which and with whom has to interact, and to have not to be lost inside the game. And we have also over there in the left bottom part of the screen an options and the objectives. Sorry, in order to know which are the objectives to reach in this scenario, in each scene. Okay. And if the objective is achieved, the mark change, and we have an explanation of the objective itself. Because at the first time when we validate the game in the first validation workshop, we didn't have this objectives part and the radar. We didn't have this, and they were a little bit lost about what have to be done here, or what is the objective that we have to do. In order to help them, we included both elements. Okay, yes. These are the emojis, okay? This is the emotional part that we have mentioned before, the auras, and the emojis around the person is the emotional feeling of this person in this way. At the beginning, we included some other elements around the auras, and in order to understand better for them, we suggested us, the people who participate in the validation workshop, that we include emojis, but because these elements are better understand by them. Okay, so yeah, this is the end. Okay, so we have 6 interactive adventures developed among different cybercrimes, and the people has to follow all of them sequentially until the end. And then they can replay again in order to select other decisions, in order to know more about what happens if they select other things inside the game. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lere and Anna to having introduced us to the game and show it to us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm not sure if there's any burning question or Yes, exactly. So the game in the afternoon, so after lunch, it will be possible to use it, to play with that, to test it, play all the adventures, because of course we were just looking at the very beginning of it. So this might be also another moment to kind of, if you have other, let's say, information you want to know more about the game itself, it might be a good also moment once you see it fully. Thank you very much then. Oh, you have one. Oh, sorry.
Why the choice to put so many texts in the game? Text words, yeah. Because I think for some people it could be a problem.
Yeah, totally. But if we want to collect information, it wasn't very important to describe the situations in a test way. So that's why we try to reduce at maximum the tests. But in some scenarios, we need to detail very well the situation. So the answer we get from players is what we wanted in some way. So that's why we have tests. We also thought about putting voice, but it's very, as we have 13 languages in the game, it was very cost to have the translation and so on. So that's why we select this design. Of course, for a commercial game, we should add the voice.
And also, this is an adventure serious game. Okay, this is an adventure. It's literally different of a serious game, as we know. Okay, it's an adventure, so the adventures has to need explain and in order to understand and take the better decision. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would now invite Mario Castro, thank you, I see you already here, from Universidad Comillas, Pontificia Comillas, sorry, and he is going to introduce us to the data analysis from the different gathering, once gathered, all the different data coming from using the game from the young people. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to thank all the participants in Rayuela. Actually, I'm happy to present these results, but this is of course not the results of Work Package 6. This is a team effort, and as such, I would like to use the motto of Rayuela, which is a fun way to fight cybercrime. And I would like to say that Rayuela is being a fun way to do science. Okay, so let me share with you this excitement that I have presenting these results. Okay, so I would like to thank Edmond Awad for his terrific talk, because part of the things that I wanted to mention here has been mentioned before. So serious game has to be taken serious because they are excellent research opportunities, but we will also add another ingredient that also came in Gregorio's question, is that serious game can also be used as evidence-based policy making tool. So I would like to convince you about that with the results. Okay, just another mention to a previous talk. So you have seen that the Rayuela game includes six adventures. So let me take some time to give you some details about the data. As I was mentioning, this has been a huge effort, a collective effort. So I think it's worth mentioning the numbers in this initiative. So let me start with the number of participants, the number of choices in the game. We are somewhere in the middle between traditional science, in which the numbers of participants are in the few hundreds, and massive online serious games like Edmond have presented, which are in the thousands or millions. So here we are in the few thousands, but remember that we are running this in controlled environments like schools and so on. So we haven't deployed the game massively in, I don't know, Apple market or Android market, so the numbers are small. But in principle, this methodology should scale up a little bit using these platforms. So we are now in this side of the range, so we're in the good part of the numbers. We would like to go to the great part of the numbers. So we would like to be in the millions, but this is reality, okay? More demographics, so this is the distribution of ages. As you can see, the distribution is pretty well balanced. There is a small peak, sorry, in 15, but overall we have a good representation of each age. This was a concern at the beginning of the game, because in some pilots the distribution was kind of skewed. So at the end of the game, everything was more or less balanced. This is not the case in all of the demographics. For instance, here you can see that the distribution is biased towards heterosexual, basically, but also we have this slight bias toward men versus women. Okay. More demographics. So here you can see the countries. So Spain had made a huge effort in the pilots, as you can see. But I think we can say that this is an international effort. So I think the numbers are pretty good, and I'm happy that all the countries have been able to deploy the game and have these results. Also another distribution, this is more concerning. So you can see that almost all the distribution is heterosexual. I prefer not to say, but we have to take into account this in order to have sound conclusions. And we have to do some post-analysis that we call post-stratification in order to correct these numbers with respect to the real redistribution of the population. Okay. More demographics. So this is a distribution of hours. This is all self-reported, so we don't know if this is true, but this is in principle the best that we can do. Ask them if the number of hours they have spent. You can see the distribution is pretty large, so we have very, slight, almost, concerning numbers for some of the players, but most of them are around 3 or 4 hours a week, so we can say that these are digital natives, so they spend a lot of time per day using computer and the internet. And also some other distribution of variables. So here you have social and family support. So this is not perfect, but I would say that it's not as unbalanced as I would expect. So we have a good representation of each group. So I think the analysis can be carried out with some guarantees. Okay, just another question. One of the challenges that Edmond posed in the previous talk is what about the role that you play when you're interacting with a computer game. So are you playing as in real life? Are you playing like crazy? Are you trying to kill every zombie that you have in the game? Or are you just trying to be as ethical as your values provide to you? So we asked this question at the end. We call this the honesty question, and this is a crucial part of the Rayuela game because we can somehow stratify according to different self-reported. Of course, this is also self-reported. So we have 4 categories. We would like to say that the 2 green, we could say that they are playing more or less like in real life, and the 2 reddish ones they are playing almost opposite as they would do in real life. But this is also interesting because if you're playing opposite as you would do in real life, those decisions are also informative for the data analysis, okay? Because somehow you're doing the opposite as you would do, and that's informative as well. Okay, so when you hear the word data analysis, many words come to your mind. So in the old times, you could say, okay, this is statistics. This could be, nowadays we will say, this is machine learning. We are not using machine learning. We have done some machine learning, but basically we're using this methodology that we call probabilistic causal graphs. So probabilistic is a known word. I will explain a little bit that later. Graphs means that we are drawing our hypothesis, and I will show you that later. But let me talk a little bit about this word, which is causal. This is a loaded word. Every time I bring that word into a conversation, some discussion comes into the table, and this is because there are some connotations with that word. So let me explain what do we mean by causal. So imagine that we have a tornado. We have a tornado, then the trees are shaking, okay? This means that the tornado causes the shake of the tree, okay? But causation does not go in the other direction. So we could shake the trees, but we are not going to produce a local tornado, okay? So in that regard, when we talk about cause or causality, we're talking about intervention. So what happens if we intervene in this variable? Do we expect some outcome coming from the other side of the event? Okay, let me show you a brief example, and I'll try to rush a little bit now. So imagine that we want to study this hypothesis, maybe years of education, cost earnings. This is our hypothesis because in principle, we think that if we create some scholarships or give some programs in order to increase the number of years in education for the minors, we expect that at the end of the day, years later, the income of those participants will be increased. Okay, this is the causal role. The problem is that randomized control trials, so we have to do observational studies. And in observational studies, we have some confounding factors. So for instance, we could have social status or family wealth that could cause these 2 variables. Typically, the the children of people from accommodated families spend more time in college and so on and so forth. So we don't know how to do that. But the good thing with this probabilistic causal graph is that it's a mathematical methodology in order to emulate the idea of the randomized control trial, in which basically you are creating a control group and an intervention group. Okay, this is not the same, and this is why the word probabilistic is in the title. So we are not sure that this is a true control, but we can assign somehow probabilities to that. Okay, with all those caveats, let me start with the analysis of the game. So you can translate goal that I mentioned before with years of education. This would be the Rayuela causal graph. This is scary. I know we will spend a lot of time discussing this, but this is not just a matter of drawing. So we have drafted some of these graphs and then discussed with people from Work Package 1, especially with Maria, who has been very patient with us with this methodology and all the discussions. And we end up with this graph. And the idea is that in this graph, we are using all the information that is collected with the game, as Larry and I have mentioned before, but also we are saying that the answers of the game are caused by your profile. So basically, if you have some propensity to be a cyberbullying offender, for instance, you are going to answer these questions. But also we have to take into account this honesty question. Okay, the honesty question means that if you're playing opposite as in real life, of course you're going to do all the nasty things that the game allows you to do, but probably those are not so informative as they would say. Okay, so we have to include these arrows there. Okay. Okay, just a little comment about this probabilistic part. Some of the adventures are what we call informative. By informative, we mean that we can start with some prior knowledge, so we could see, okay, this player has a risk pattern of variables, and we think that this person with these demographics could be at risk of being an offender, him or herself. But then we have to put them into play. So, of course, if they click in this answer, the risk is going to increase. If they click in this one, the risk is going to decrease. And if they click in this final option, which basically says nothing, probably this number is not going to change. So we are updating our probabilities of assigning different risk factors to each variable according to decisions. This part of the game is informative, but there can be other parts of the game, like this one in the bowling, which basically, or in the school, where basically you're saying, oh, it's a sunny day. This kind of is there just because this is an adventure, it has to be fun, so they engage with the game, but these are not informative, okay? And this kind of interactions are really interesting because allow us to have some control. So to put some numbers, what we think that is not very relevant for the game, or what adventures are really giving us strong information. And this is going to affect also policy making, because we can target those adventures which are more informative and try to create educational programs around those situations, okay? Okay, let me skip that. Yeah? Ah, the mic, sorry, yeah. I always forget about that. Yeah. I like these Madonna ones, which we have the mic here. Okay, so let me go into the numbers. So what happens if we just analyze one variable at a time? So imagine that we are doing like traditional statistics, but using this framework. And basically, you fix everything and just manipulate one variable. We know from previous talk that this is maybe not the best way of doing this analysis, because sometimes there are some synergy between factors that can go in either direction. But if you do this, you find something interesting. The most interesting thing here is that if you take a look at these things that we have collected during the surveys and the registration part of the game, only previous victimization is affecting the risk of being a cyberbullying offending. The other variables are poorly informative, so we cannot say anything almost for all these variables. On the one hand, this is interesting, but because it means that, I know, you're free to take your own choices, so there is nothing in your national ID that is going to tell you if you're going to be at risk of being an offender. But the second conclusion, which is more relevant for us, is that as we have seen before, the game has been carefully designed to include these adventures, maybe with some text in some cases, but it's been on purpose to try to test this hypothesis. And the good thing is that the game is working. So basically, all the information relevant for the analysis is coming from the actions of the players. So basically, the first take-home message that I want to tell you is that the game is working. So basically, we're reproducing the same as the validated questionnaires using the game. And this is also, I think, something which is novel. So basically, we have this idea, especially in psychology, that if you want to say something relevant, something significant in order to make policy making, either you do a randomized control trial or you use a validated questionnaire. So basically, we're saying here, okay, you're playing a game and the conclusions are almost the same as in the validated questionnaire. So basically this reinforces this idea that serious games can be used as scientific tools, okay? And we want to exploit this idea of being fun or having fun during the game, and also doing science and on background. Okay, second message, okay, this is, forget about the graphs, I don't want to get into the numbers, but here is something that I want to emphasize, which also came in Edmond's talk, is that sometimes you have to combine different variables. In his case was this idea of elderly versus young, being in China or being in America. So in that case, what we are showing here is what happens with the evidence, or what's the evidence that we have according to these risk patterns or risk profiles, according to including more numbers. So if we have one variable at a time, we have the same information as before. If we include more variables, we can go, okay, we will see there is this cluster of variables, which is, for instance, previous victimization and being male, which pops up a little bit. So we start crossing, getting closer to this significant evidence threshold. I don't have time to explain that, but basically this line means that you would bet 3-1 that this is true, and this line would mean that you would bet 10-1 that this is true. If you compare this with the bets in the football World Cup, typically in the final, Argentina versus France, basically the bets were like 1.2-1. So basically we're putting a lot of money in here, okay? This is 10-1 confidence that this is true, okay? And as you can see, if we increase the number of evidences that we are putting in the analysis, we are more confident about the patterns that we can cluster together in order to say something significant about the players. Another interesting thing is that, as you can see, the blue curve represents the questions of the game, the orange curve represents the demographics, let's say, of the players. As you can see, the most informative part is the game. So if we don't have enough data, and this is come from the second pilot, if the numbers are in the hundreds, basically we need to put the players to play over and over again in order to say something significant. But the interesting thing is that as we increase the number of variables, the questions are less important in comparison or clustered with the demographics. So the synergy comes in here. So we don't need we don't rely only on the blue curve. We can combine both curves and have more evidence. So the more data we have, the more sure we are about the conclusions. Okay. Let me show you how we do this sort of analysis. You can do this automatically, but basically you can do this. You can translate this into this fancy software called Genie, and basically you can click in different parts. So you can emulate this randomized control trial. So you can say, okay, what happens if we do an intervention in a school, and basically we target males, and we target this discussion about gender, or we isolate, for instance, people with self-reported high self-esteem or whatever. Okay, so you can emulate this thing without doing the real experiment, okay? And if you do this and you cluster the variables, you end up with this conclusion. So in the case of cyberbullying offending, the most clear-cut variable, the take-home message about this risk is that the most relevant variables haven't suffered previous victimization before. And again, going back to this idea of policy making, if you want to target and you want to do educational programs or interventions, you have to target people who have suffered victimization in the past, because they are probably the most likely ones who are going to be offenders in the future, okay? Now, let's go back to this idea of the synergy between the game and the variables. In principle, we could call this cluster of variables, okay, this is the target people that we should have in mind when we think about offending. But, and this is a big but, as you can see here, okay? So demographic is not all in life. So we have free will, and in principle, our choices are relevant too. And this is interesting because if you take, for instance, some of these clusters of variables, you take a male who has suffered previous victimization, empathy is medium family support, it spends more than 3 hours on internet, and you say, okay, this is going to be a risky one. So you plug that into the software. Before knowing anything in society, more or less, there is this estimate that 10% of the people could be a cyberbullying offender. Then you plug these variables and, okay, you raise your probability to 42%, which is pretty high, okay? But what if you take into account the game? What if you click in this part of the game, which basically says, I'm honest, of course, we're checking this honesty question, I'm honest and I'm not going to do this nasty thing, or I'm not going to accept this invitation. Then the probabilities drop down to 26%, okay, which is, according to, in this case, and according to analysis, below this evidence threshold, meaning that you can look like a nasty guy, but if your choices are good, you're a good guy, okay? So this is my second take-home message. Basically, we cannot talk about patterning or variables or profiling without taking actions into play. And let me show you an expert in this topic, which is Albus Dumbledore. And basically, this is the sentence that summarizes the Rayuela project. Basically, it's in our choices where we have information. So it's in play in the game where we extract information about risk factors. Okay. Just a final remark, because I'm running out of time, sorry for that. Yeah, so this is basically the conclusions from the data analysis. This is the conclusion from the experts and also the literature, but basically the massive work that people from Work Package 1 have done to extract this information. And there is a strong agreement in the most important factors. There are some disagreement in these factors, but interestingly, these factors are the less influential ones. So basically, we are in complete agreement with what the expert says in this cybercrime. Okay, very fast. What about other cybercrimes? Evidence is lower. So for instance, victimization, we are not so sure of anything. So we have to be more careful doing the analysis. And we do compare with the experts, we see something like this. So there is some agreement, but there is some disagreement, even in variables that we consider or they consider relevant. So basically the game is not working as well as here. And you can ask why. Okay, maybe because victimization is complex. There are many factors affecting victimization. Anyone can be a victim, okay? But maybe there is another question which is relevant for science, is that Rayuela was not designing to target victims. So we are not putting the minors into the role of the victim because of ethical concerns. So basically this leads us to the third take-home message, and my final message, which basically is properly designing serious games can be used as instruments, but you have to design it properly. I mean, there is no size fits all, okay? There is no one that can target all cybercrimes. If you want to study one cybercrime, you have to design properly that cybercrime. And that's all, thank you.
Thank you, Mario, very much.
Thank you for the patience.
No, it's all good, of course. Are there any questions? And in this case, not just burning ones, because of course, while rushing, I guess there might be some doubts or things that would be worth maybe to address in these minutes, if you have any.
Maybe I missed it. I'm Julian from CEPOL. What kind of application you use for the analysis? I've missed that part. Exactly. What did you use? What program did you use for that?
Genie. It's called Genie.
Okay, Genie.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a Bayesian network.
Continuing the question.
Yeah.
And then you said the last question in the game is that if they were simulating their behavior in the game, or it was real, or they will act like this. So you took into consideration both cases, like the ones that simulated and the ones that behaved. Okay.
Yeah. So we've one of them is including all the information, and the other is just filtering. Actually, we have done in 2 stages. Just filtering the ones who say 100% like in real life. Okay. That would be, and the results are almost the same, which is also interesting. But that means that you can put those players, those minors into play, and this is one of the limitations of serious games. That sometimes we are not sure if they are playing like in real life. But even in that case, if they self-report as not playing like in real life, the conclusions are the same. So this is another good message because it tells you that you could, try to deploy this to a broader audience and expect that the results could be consistent. Thank you.
Is there another question? Oh, yeah.
At the beginning, you were talking about causality and intervention, and then we see in the graph age and gender pointing at these things. So what would that mean in terms of intervention?
Well, in terms of intervention, you cannot change the gender of a person. You cannot say, okay, I'm going to change all your chromosomes in your body. You cannot do that. But in that case, intervention means that you are just targeting one of the groups. So you are isolating from the study one of the groups. So it's like doing a control only one side of the gender. Yeah, but that's a tricky question.
Right, yeah, so if you replace a male with a female.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what if everybody was a female? That's the question. It's not just changing your sex, basically.
Any other questions or comments for Mario? Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much. Mario. Gregorio, I'll ask you if you want to say a few words to close up this first session. Yep.
Thank you, Claudia. I will be brief. Thank you all for this terrific session. David said that cybercrime has no frontiers. I think that we all agree on that. And Edmund illustrates that online serious game has the potential to go viral and reach a worldwide audience, right? In our case, we have to say that we didn't go viral, but we did it on purpose because we couldn't put the game in the wild because the gamers, the players are minors, and we are dealing with a cybercrime. So we took the highest ethical and legal standards to avoid getting problem in this sense. Nevertheless, I think that the numbers are great, and this is thanks to the team that did such a great effort in the pilots, as we will also see in the next sessions. Nothing else from my side. I hope that you have enjoyed this session as much as I did, and that you keep enjoying the next sessions that will be also very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregor. Now is a good time for a coffee break that you will find for those that are here, just downstairs, for the next half an hour. So we will be back. This is also for the online participants in here at 11:30.